Have you ever wondered how divine intervention can change the course of a family's destiny? This is the miraculous journey of Tobiah, guided by the angel Raphael. It's a tale of courage, faith, and supernatural guidance, featuring one of the most unique partnerships in biblical history. A young man and an angel, on a mission of redemption and healing. But what challenges could require angelic assistance? And how did an ordinary fish play a key role in a life-changing miracle? Set in the ancient times of the Old Testament, this story begins with a family in crisis. A blind father, financial struggles, and a perilous journey for his only son. Stay with us as we uncover the timeless lessons of faith, love, and God's providence, woven into this extraordinary biblical adventure. In the days of the Old Testament, when the people of Israel clung to their faith in God amidst trials and tribulations, there lived a righteous man named Tobit. He was a man deeply devoted to God, known for his acts of charity and compassion. Tobit was the kind of man who, even in times of exile, remained steadfast in following God's commandments. He gave generously to the poor, buried the dead with dignity, and upheld the sacred traditions of his people. But even the righteous are not exempt from suffering, and Tobit's faith was soon put to the ultimate test. One fateful day, Tobit's sight was taken from him. Blinded by an unfortunate accident involving bird droppings while he rested in his courtyard, his life drastically changed. No longer able to work or provide for his family, he was plunged into a world of darkness, both literally and figuratively. What once was a life of stability and generosity now became a struggle for survival. His wife, Anna, worked tirelessly to keep their household afloat, but the weight of their financial burdens was heavy. Tobit, who had always been the pillar of strength for his family, now found himself unable to fulfill the duties he once carried out with pride. Despite these hardships, Tobit's faith never wavered. He prayed fervently, trusting that God would somehow provide a way out of their suffering. Yet, as days turned to months and months to years, the weight of despair began to creep into his heart. How long would his family have to endure this trial? How could he protect and care for his loved ones when he could not even see their faces? These questions haunted him, but he refused to give up hope. It was during this time of trial that Tobit remembered something. A debt owed to him by a relative in a distant land. Years ago, he had lent a substantial sum of money to a kinsman named Raphael, who lived in the land of Media. The money had been carefully stored in trust, a safety net for uncertain times. Now, with his family's situation growing increasingly dire, Tobit knew that retrieving this money was their only chance to find relief. But the journey to Media was long and treacherous, fraught with dangers and uncertainties. Tobit, being blind, was incapable of making the trip himself. This was when his thoughts turned to his only son, Tobiah. A young man full of vigor and obedience, Tobiah had always been a source of comfort and pride for his father. Though still inexperienced in the ways of the world, Tobiah possessed a kind heart and a willingness to shoulder responsibility. Tobit called for his son and shared his plan. "My son," Tobit said, his voice filled with both hope and concern. "We are in desperate need. You know of the money I entrusted to Raphael in Media. It is time to retrieve it. I cannot make the journey myself, but you, my son, can take on this task. It will not be easy, for the road is long and full of dangers, but with God's guidance, I believe you will succeed." Tobiah listened intently to his father's words. Though the weight of the responsibility was great, he did not hesitate. His love for his father and his desire to help his family outweighed any fear he might have felt. He nodded firmly, his heart resolute. "Father, I will go. I will bring back the money and do all that is needed to help our family. I trust that God will be with me every step of the way." Tobit smiled, though tears welled in his eyes. He felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. Pride in his son's courage and sorrow at the thought of the dangers he might face. He prayed earnestly, asking God to send his protection over Tobiah and to guide him on this important mission. Before Tobiah's departure, Anna, his mother, voiced her concerns. Like any mother, she worried deeply for her son's safety. The thought of him traveling so far from home, across unfamiliar lands, filled her with anxiety. She pleaded with Tobit, "How can we send him alone? He is so young and inexperienced. What if something happens to him? How will he find his way? How will he protect himself?" Tobit, though understanding of his wife's fears, reassured her. "Do not worry, Anna. God will send his angel to accompany Tobiah. He will not be alone. Our faith in the Lord must be our strength. Trust that he will provide the guidance and protection our son needs." With those words, preparations for the journey began. Tobiah packed what little provisions they could afford: bread, water, and a small sum of money for any expenses along the way. Tobit gave him detailed instructions on how to find Gabael and retrieve the debt. But as the day of departure approached, an unspoken tension lingered in the air. Though they all trusted in God's providence, the uncertainties of the journey weighed heavily on their hearts. As Tobiah stood at the threshold of their home, ready to embark on his journey, his father called him back for a final blessing. Placing his hands on his son's shoulders, Tobit said, "Go with God, my son. May he send his angel to guide you and bring you back safely to us. Remember all that I have taught you. Be honest, be kind, and trust in the Lord with all your heart." With those words, Tobiah stepped out into the unknown. His heart was filled with a mixture of excitement, determination, and a hint of apprehension. He was about to begin an extraordinary journey, one that would not only change his life, but also reveal the miraculous ways in which God intervenes in the lives of those who trust in him. Little did Tobiah know, a divine companion was already preparing to meet him, one who would walk beside him through every trial and challenge ahead. Life in Tobit's household was defined by two unwavering pillars: faith and resilience. Despite his blindness and the unrelenting financial struggles that plagued his family, Tobit never faltered in his devotion to God. Each morning, before the sun rose, his voice could be heard in fervent prayer, a testament to his enduring faith. He prayed for his family, for strength to endure their trials, and for God to send his guidance and provision. Tobit's words were not mere rituals. They were the outpouring of a heart that deeply trusted in God's providence, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. But life had become increasingly difficult. Blinded by a tragic accident that left his vision permanently impaired, Tobit could no longer work to support his family. His wife, Anna, had taken up the role of breadwinner, spinning wool and weaving cloth to sell at the local market. It was tedious, backbreaking work, and yet the money she earned barely covered their daily needs. Anna worked tirelessly, but the toll it took on her was evident in her weary posture and tired eyes. For Tobit, this was a source of deep pain. A man who had once been the pillar of his household now felt powerless, dependent on others for even the simplest of tasks. Tobiah, their only son, shared in the family's burden. Though still young, he understood the weight of their struggles. He watched as his mother labored late into the night and as his father wrestled with his blindness and feelings of helplessness. Tobiah wished he could do more to ease their suffering, but he often felt unsure of how to help. Despite this, he remained steadfastly devoted to his family, taking on whatever responsibilities he could to support them. One evening, as the family gathered for their modest supper, Tobit broke the silence with a heavy sigh. "We cannot continue like this," he said, his voice tinged with both sorrow and determination. "There is something we must do." Anna and Tobiah looked at him curiously. "What is it, father?" Tobiah asked, leaning forward to hear more. Tobit took a deep breath before continuing. "Years ago, I entrusted a sum of money to a relative named Gabael in Media. It was a safety net, a provision for uncertain times. I believe the time has come to retrieve it." Anna's face clouded with concern. "Media? But that is so far away. How will we manage such a journey? You cannot travel in your condition." Tobit nodded solemnly. "I know I cannot go myself, but Tobiah can. He is young, strong, and capable. With God's guidance, he can make the journey and bring back what we need." Anna turned to Tobiah, her maternal instincts kicking in. "My son, this is a dangerous task. The roads are long and treacherous, filled with thieves and wild animals. How can we send you alone?" Tobiah, though apprehensive, met his mother's worried gaze with a steady resolve. "Mother, if this is what our family needs, I will do it. I trust in God to protect me. Father has taught me to have faith, and I believe that the Lord will guide me on this journey." Tobit reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "My son, this is not just about the money. It is about trusting in God's provision and stepping forward in faith. You are not alone in this. God will send his angel to accompany you and keep you safe." Though Anna still felt uneasy, she could see the determination in Tobiah's eyes. Reluctantly, she agreed, though her heart ached at the thought of her son venturing so far from home. In the days leading up to his departure, Tobiah prepared for the journey as best as he could. He gathered provisions, bread, water, and a small amount of money for any unexpected expenses. Tobit gave him detailed instructions on how to find Gabael and retrieve the debt. The atmosphere in the household was a mixture of hope and apprehension. They all knew this journey was necessary, but the uncertainties weighed heavily on their hearts. The morning of Tobiah's departure arrived, and the family gathered to see him off. Tobit placed his hands on his son's shoulders, blessing him with heartfelt words. "May the Lord go before you, my son. Trust in him with all your heart, and he will make your path straight. Remember all that I have taught you, and be kind and honest in all that you do." Anna embraced Tobiah tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Come back to us safely, my son. You are the light of this family. Do not forget that we are praying for you every step of the way." Tobiah nodded, his heart filled with a mixture of determination and apprehension. He turned to leave, but as he stepped out onto the road, he was met with an unexpected figure. A man stood there, tall and composed, with a calm yet commanding presence. He introduced himself as Azariah, a fellow traveler who claimed to know the roads to Media well. His voice was steady and kind, and his words carried a sense of wisdom that immediately caught Tobiah's attention. "You seem to be preparing for a journey," Azariah said, studying Tobiah with a gentle smile. "Where are you headed?" Tobiah hesitated for a moment before replying. "I am traveling to Media to retrieve a debt owed to my father. It is a long journey, and I must go alone." Azariah nodded thoughtfully. "A noble mission, indeed. But such a journey should not be undertaken alone. The roads can be dangerous, and it is always wise to have a companion. I know the way to Media well and would be honored to accompany you." Tobiah was taken aback by the offer. This man, a complete stranger, was volunteering to help him on one of the most important missions of his life. While part of him was wary, there was something about Azariah that inspired trust. His demeanor was calm and reassuring, and his knowledge of the roads seemed genuine. "Why would you offer to help me?" Tobiah asked, his tone cautious. Azariah's smile deepened. "Sometimes, helping others is the journey we are meant to take. You have a purpose, young man, and I believe it is my purpose to help you fulfill it." After a moment of contemplation, Tobiah agreed. He felt a strange sense of peace about this encounter, as if it were part of a larger plan. Together, he and Azariah began their journey. What Tobiah did not know was that Azariah was no ordinary man. He was, in fact, the Archangel Raphael, sent by God to guide and protect Tobiah on this perilous mission. Disguised as a humble traveler, Raphael had been watching over Tobit's family, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. His offer to accompany Tobiah was not a coincidence but a divine intervention, orchestrated by God himself. As they walked, Azariah proved to be more than just a guide. He shared stories and wisdom that seemed to speak directly to Tobiah's heart. He pointed out landmarks, taught Tobiah how to navigate the terrain, and even helped him gather food along the way. His presence was both practical and deeply reassuring. One evening, as they rested by a fire, Tobiah confided in Azariah. "I just want to help my father. He has done so much for me, and now he suffers so greatly. If this journey can bring him even a small amount of relief, it will all be worth it." Azariah looked at Tobiah with a knowing smile. "Your father's faith has shaped you into a man of great character. Do not doubt that God sees your efforts and your heart. He is with you even now." Tobiah felt a renewed sense of purpose. Though he still did not fully understand who Azariah truly was, he trusted him completely. And as they journeyed onward, Tobiah began to realize that this was not just a physical journey. It was a spiritual one, a test of faith and courage that would prepare him for the trials to come. Tobiah and Azariah, the mysterious traveler who had offered to guide him, set off on their long journey to Media. The road stretched out before them, winding through rugged terrain, dense forests, and barren plains. At times, the journey felt overwhelming to Tobiah. Yet, with Azariah by his side, he found himself feeling strangely reassured. The man seemed to know every twist and turn of the road, every stream and resting place. His confidence and calm demeanor were a source of strength for Tobiah. But the journey was not without its challenges. As the days passed, the landscape grew increasingly harsh. The once lush fields gave way to arid deserts, and the heat of the sun bore down on them relentlessly. Water sources became scarce, and the weight of their provisions felt heavier with each passing mile. Tobiah began to wonder if he was truly prepared for the journey. He looked to Azariah for guidance, and the man's steady presence kept him moving forward. One afternoon, after a particularly exhausting stretch of travel, they came upon a wide river. The water sparkled under the sunlight, offering a welcome reprieve from the heat. Tobiah's face lit up at the sight of it. "Finally, a place to rest and refresh ourselves," he exclaimed. Azariah nodded in agreement. "Yes, the river will provide what we need. But be cautious, Tobiah. Even places of refreshment can hold unexpected dangers." Tobiah didn't think much of Azariah's words as he rushed to the riverbank. He knelt down to drink, savoring the cool water against his parched throat. The river seemed peaceful, its gentle current flowing steadily downstream. Encouraged by the calmness of the scene, Tobiah decided to wade into the water to cool off. But as he stood waist-deep in the river, something stirred beneath the surface. Before he could react, a massive fish lunged at him, its powerful jaws snapping dangerously close to his leg. Tobiah cried out in alarm, stumbling backward in the water. The fish was unlike anything he had ever seen, huge, with sharp teeth and an almost menacing presence. It circled him, its movements swift and deliberate, as if it were stalking its prey. "Tobiah!" Azariah called out from the riverbank. His voice was calm but firm. "Do not panic. Stand your ground and listen carefully to what I tell you." Tobiah, though frightened, trusted Azariah's voice of authority. He steadied himself, trying to keep his footing in the rushing water. The fish lunged at him again, but this time Tobiah was ready. Following Azariah's instructions, he grabbed hold of the fish with both hands, struggling against its thrashing movements. The fish was strong, but Tobiah's determination was stronger. "Hold on tight," Azariah shouted. "Do not let it go." With a final burst of strength, Tobiah wrestled the fish to the shore. He collapsed onto the riverbank, breathing heavily, as the massive creature lay flopping beside him. It was a miraculous sight. This young man, unarmed and inexperienced, had just subdued a fish that could have easily overpowered him. Azariah approached calmly, a slight smile on his face. "Well done, Tobiah. You have shown courage and strength. But this fish is more than just a test of your resolve. It is a gift from God." Tobiah looked up at Azariah, confused. "A gift? What do you mean?" Azariah knelt beside the fish and began to carefully cut it open. As he worked, he explained, "This fish holds something of great value. Its liver, heart, and gallbladder are not ordinary organs. They possess properties that can be used for healing and protection." Tobiah watched in amazement as Azariah extracted the organs and placed them carefully in a pouch. "What are we supposed to do with these?" Tobiah asked, his voice filled with curiosity. Azariah's expression grew thoughtful. "For now, you must keep them safe. There will come a time when you will need them, though I cannot yet reveal when or how. Trust that God has a purpose for everything, even for this fish." Though Tobiah didn't fully understand, he nodded, accepting Azariah's words. He had learned to trust his companion's wisdom, even when it was shrouded in mystery. He helped Azariah prepare the rest of the fish for their journey, preserving the meat to serve as sustenance for the days ahead. As they continued on their way, Tobiah couldn't help but replay the events in his mind. The encounter with the fish had been unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was as if the river itself had been waiting for him, holding this strange creature that was both a threat and a blessing. And Azariah, how had he known exactly what to do? The man's calmness in the face of danger, his knowledge of the fish's unique properties, and his mysterious words all pointed to something beyond the ordinary. Tobiah began to wonder if there was more to his companion than met the eye. Who was Azariah, really? And how did he seem to possess such divine insight? These questions lingered in Tobiah's mind, adding an air of intrigue to their journey. Though he did not voice his suspicions, he felt that there was a greater plan unfolding, one that he could not yet fully comprehend. The encounter with the fish marked a turning point for Tobiah. It was the first real challenge of his journey, a test of both his physical strength and his trust in Azariah's guidance. But it was also a moment of revelation, a glimpse into the divine hand that seemed to be guiding their steps. As they walked onward, Tobiah felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer just retrieving a debt. He was part of something much larger, a story that was being written by the hand of God. That night, as they set up camp by the side of the road, Tobiah turned to Azariah with a question that had been weighing on his heart. "Do you think God is really watching over us?" he asked softly. Azariah looked at him with a gentle smile. "Tobiah, God is always watching over his children. He knows our struggles, our fears, and our hopes. And he sends help in ways we cannot always understand. Today, that help came in the form of a fish. Tomorrow, it may come in another form. The key is to trust in his plan, even when it is not clear to us." Tobiah nodded, his heart feeling lighter. The words of his companion were like a balm to his soul, reassuring him that he was not alone in this journey. Though the road ahead was still uncertain, he knew that he could face whatever came his way, with Azariah by his side and God's guidance lighting his path. Little did Tobiah know, the encounter with the fish was only the beginning. Greater challenges lay ahead, and the mysterious organs Azariah had instructed him to keep would soon play a pivotal role in a miraculous series of events that would forever change his life and the lives of those he loved. The river's edge had grown quiet after the commotion of the fish, leaving Tobiah and Azariah alone with their thoughts. The massive creature now lay subdued on the shore, its size still a source of wonder to Tobiah. For a moment, he simply stared at the fish, trying to process everything that had just happened. The sheer strength of the fish, the danger it posed, and the way he had somehow overcome it, all of it felt surreal. Azariah knelt by the fish, his hands steady and purposeful as he began to prepare it. "You did well, Tobiah," he said, glancing up with a calm smile. "Few would have had the courage to stand their ground as you did." Tobiah, still catching his breath, shook his head in disbelief. "I don't even know how I managed it. It all happened so fast. If you hadn't told me what to do." His voice trailed off as he looked at Azariah, gratitude mixed with curiosity in his eyes. "How did you know?" Azariah paused for a moment, his gaze steady but unreadable. "Let's just say that guidance often comes when we need it most. Sometimes all we have to do is listen." Tobiah frowned slightly, sensing there was more to Azariah's words than he was letting on. But before he could ask further, Azariah turned his attention back to the fish. He worked with an efficiency that Tobiah found remarkable, expertly cutting and cleaning the creature as if he had done it 1,000 times before. The large fish, once a source of fear, was now being transformed into a resource, its meat preserved for the journey ahead and its mysterious organs carefully set aside. "This will sustain us for days," Azariah said, holding up a portion of the fish's flesh. "And as I mentioned earlier, the liver, heart, and gallbladder have unique properties. They may prove invaluable in ways you cannot yet imagine." Tobiah studied the pouch where Azariah had stored the organs, his curiosity growing. "What do you mean by that? How can parts of a fish be so important?" Azariah's expression remained calm, but his tone carried a note of mystery. "In time, you will understand. For now, trust that they are meant to be part of this journey. Everything we encounter has a purpose, even if we cannot see it right away. Tobiah nodded slowly, though he couldn't shake the feeling that Azariah knew far more than he was revealing. This wasn't the first time his companion had shown remarkable foresight. From the moment they met, Azariah had seemed unusually prepared, as if he had anticipated every challenge before it arose. Tobiah found himself wondering who this man really was. Could he truly be just a traveler, or was there something more to him? As they continued their journey, the preserved fish provided them with much-needed nourishment. Each evening, as they stopped to rest, Tobiah would watch Azariah with growing curiosity. The man's knowledge of the terrain, his ability to navigate through difficult paths, and his calm demeanor in the face of adversity all seemed extraordinary. It was as if nothing could surprise or unsettle him. Tobiah couldn't help but feel that Azariah carried an air of quiet authority, a presence that inspired both trust and awe. One evening, as they sat by a small fire, Tobiah finally voiced the question that had been lingering in his mind. "Azariah," he began hesitantly, "you've been a great help to me so far, and I'm truly grateful. But I can't help but wonder, how do you know so much? It's like you've been on this journey before, or like you already know what's going to happen." Azariah looked up from the fire, his expression thoughtful. For a moment, he seemed to weigh his words carefully before responding. "Tobiah, sometimes in life we are placed in situations that require us to trust. Trust in God, trust in those He sends to help us, and trust in the path we are meant to follow. Perhaps it is not for you to know everything now, but to have faith that all will be revealed in time." Tobiah frowned slightly, unsatisfied with the cryptic answer but unwilling to press further. There was something about Azariah that made him want to believe, even if he couldn't fully understand. The man's presence had already proven to be a blessing, and Tobiah didn't want to risk jeopardizing the fragile trust they had built. As the days turned into weeks, Tobiah began to notice other subtle things about Azariah. The way he seemed to know when a storm was coming before there was any sign of clouds. The way he could find water in the driest of places. The way his words always seemed to carry a deeper meaning, as if they were meant to teach lessons that Tobiah would only understand later. Slowly but surely, Tobiah's initial skepticism began to give way to trust, and with that trust came a sense of peace. One afternoon, as they rested by the side of the road, Tobiah turned to Azariah with a question that had been growing in his heart. "Do you think God is really watching over us?" he asked quietly. Azariah's smile was gentle as he replied, "Tobiah, God watches over all His children. He knows our struggles, our fears, and our hopes, and He sends help in ways we may not always recognize. Sometimes that help comes in the form of a stranger. Sometimes it comes in the form of a fish." He paused, his eyes meeting Tobiah's. "And sometimes it comes in ways far beyond our understanding." Tobiah nodded, his heart feeling lighter. Azariah's words were like a balm to his soul, reassuring him that he was not alone in this journey. The experience with the fish had been a turning point, not just in their journey but in Tobiah's understanding of faith and trust. He began to see that this mission was about more than just retrieving a debt. It was about learning to rely on God's providence, even in the face of uncertainty. As they continued their journey, Tobiah found himself growing more confident, not just in his own abilities but in the knowledge that he was being guided by something or someone greater. The bond between him and Azariah deepened, built on shared experiences and unspoken understanding. Though Tobiah still had questions about who Azariah truly was, he felt that the answers would come in time. What Tobiah didn't realize was that this was just the beginning. The encounter with the fish and the lessons it brought were but a glimpse of the greater challenges and miracles that lay ahead. And through it all, Azariah, calm, wise, and steadfast, would remain by his side, guiding him with a purpose that Tobiah was only beginning to comprehend. As Tobiah and Azariah continued their journey, the road led them to the land of Media. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the rugged terrain as they approached the home of Raphael, Tobit's relative and the keeper of the debt. After days of travel, the sight of a welcoming dwelling was a relief to Tobiah, who was eager to rest and fulfill his father's mission. But he had no idea that this stop would introduce him to a new challenge, one far beyond anything he had faced before. The home of Gabael was modest yet warm, a small but sturdy structure surrounded by signs of a hard-working family. Gabael greeted them with open arms, his face lighting up at the sight of Tobiah. "You must be Tobit's son," he exclaimed, embracing the young man. "Your father spoke of you with such pride. It is an honor to meet you at last." Tobiah smiled, grateful for the kind reception. "Thank you, Uncle Gabael. My father sends his regards and his gratitude. I've come to retrieve the money he entrusted to you." Of course," Gabael replied, gesturing for them to enter. "But first you must rest. You've traveled far, and you're guests in my home. Please, make yourselves comfortable." As they settled in, Gabael introduced Tobiah and Azariah to the other members of his household. Among them was a young woman named Sara, whose presence immediately caught Tobiah's attention. Sara was strikingly beautiful, but her eyes carried a deep sadness, as though she bore a heavy burden that could not be spoken aloud. Tobiah felt drawn to her, sensing that there was more to her story than met the eye. During the evening meal, Tobiah learned the truth about Sara. As the family shared stories and laughter, the conversation turned somber when her name was mentioned. Gabael sighed deeply, his expression darkening. "There is something you should know about my daughter Sara," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "She is a kind and virtuous woman, but she is cursed." Tobiah leaned forward, intrigued yet concerned. "Cursed? What do you mean?" Gabael hesitated, clearly pained by the subject. "Sara has been married 7 times, he explained, but each time her husband has died on their wedding night. It is said that a demon named Asmodeus is responsible, jealous of anyone who would claim her as his bride. Despite our prayers and sacrifices, the curse remains unbroken. Sara lives in fear and isolation, believing she is doomed to a life of loneliness." Tobiah glanced at Sara, who sat silently, her eyes fixed on the ground. He could see the weight of her anguish, the way it had shaped her demeanor and spirit. Something stirred within him, a desire to help, to bring her the peace she so desperately needed. Later that evening, as the household settled for the night, Tobiah shared his thoughts with Azariah. "There must be something we can do for Sara," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "She doesn't deserve to live like this, trapped by fear and despair." Azariah regarded Tobiah with a thoughtful expression. "You have a compassionate heart, Tobiah," he said, "and it may be that you are meant to play a role in her deliverance. But know this, facing a demon is no small task. It requires faith, courage, and the guidance of God." Tobiah nodded, his resolve unwavering. "Tell me what I must do." Azariah's eyes seemed to glimmer with a divine light as he spoke. "The organs of the fish you caught earlier hold the key to breaking the curse. The demon Asmodeus can be driven away by burning the liver and heart of the fish. Their smoke will banish him, for these elements carry a power that comes from God. Once the demon is gone, Sara will be free." Though Tobiah was taken aback by the supernatural nature of the solution, he trusted Azariah's guidance. He remembered how the mysterious traveler had helped him subdue the fish and how everything so far had seemed to follow a divine plan. If Azariah believed this would work, Tobiah was willing to try. The following day, Tobiah approached Gabael and Sara with his intentions. "I wish to marry Sara," he declared, his voice steady and confident. The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Gabael's expression was a mixture of shock and concern. "Tobiah, you are a brave young man, but you must understand the risks. No one has survived a marriage to Sara. Are you truly prepared for what may happen?" Tobiah met Gabael's gaze with unwavering determination. "I believe that God has brought me here for a reason," he said, "and I believe that he will protect us. With his guidance, we can break this curse and bring peace to Sara's life." Sara, who had remained quiet throughout the conversation, looked up at Tobiah with tears in her eyes. "Do you truly mean it?" she asked softly. "Do you truly believe we can overcome this?" Tobiah nodded, his voice gentle but firm. "Ido, and I will do everything in my power to see you freed from this burden." Moved by Tobiah's courage and sincerity, Gabael and Sara agreed to proceed with the marriage. That evening, as the wedding ceremony took place, Tobiah carried with him the fish's organs that Azariah had instructed him to use. When the time came, he lit a small fire in the bridal chamber and placed the liver and heart of the fish upon the flames. The room filled with a thick, acrid smoke, and for a moment, everything seemed still. But then, a sudden gust of wind swept through the chamber, as though an unseen force were struggling against the smoke. Tobiah felt a chill run down his spine as a low, menacing growl echoed in the air. He stood firm, clutching Sarah's hand as the demon's presence grew more tangible. Azariah, who had been waiting nearby, entered the chamber with an air of authority. His calm demeanor belied the gravity of the situation. "Do not fear," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "The power of God is greater than any evil. Trust in him, and the demon will flee." As the smoke thickened, the growling grew louder, then suddenly stopped. A deafening silence filled the room, and then, as quickly as it had come, the presence was gone. The air grew still, the smoke dissipating as if it had completed its work. Tobiah turned to Sara, who looked back at him with tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. "The curse is broken." The household erupted in joy when the news spread. Gabael embraced Tobiah, calling him a hero, while Sarah's previously somber demeanor gave way to a radiant smile. For the first time in years, she felt free to hope, to love, and to live without fear. That night, as Tobiah and Sara sat together under the stars, Azariah watched them from a distance, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. The young man he had guided was beginning to understand the depth of his role in God's plan. Tobiah's courage and faith had not only delivered Sara from her torment, but had also revealed his own capacity to be an instrument of divine intervention. Though Tobiah still did not fully grasp the true nature of his companion, he felt a growing sense of awe and gratitude for the man who had guided him through each challenge. And as the stars shone brightly overhead, Tobiah knew that this was only the beginning of what God had in store for him. After their first night together, Tobiah and Sara sat in the morning light, surrounded by the joyful sounds of the household celebrating their union. The curse had been lifted, the demon banished by the divine intervention that Tobiah had courageously facilitated. Yet, the journey to this moment was long and filled with trials that tested not only his resolve but also his faith in God's providence. The bond between Tobiah and Sara had not developed overnight. Their connection had grown steadily, beginning when Tobiah first laid eyes on Sara in her father Gabael's home. Though she exuded beauty and grace, there was a visible sadness in her demeanor, a heaviness that seemed to follow her every move. Tobiah couldn't help but feel drawn to her, but when he learned about the curse that had claimed the lives of her 7 previous husbands, his initial feelings of admiration quickly turned into a mixture of fear and pity. Tobiah's feelings for Sara deepened as he spent more time with her. She revealed glimpses of her true self, her intelligence, her warmth, and the strength she had shown in enduring years of isolation and pain. Sara, too, found solace in Tobiah's presence. Unlike others who viewed her with fear or suspicion, Tobiah treated her with kindness and respect. Still, the shadow of the curse loomed over them, and neither could fully ignore the danger it posed. Late one evening, after a long day of conversations and preparations, Tobiah sat outside under the stars, lost in thought. His heart was heavy with the decision he faced. He wanted to marry Sara, but the thought of becoming her 8th husband, and potentially sharing the same fate as the others, filled him with dread. He couldn't bear the idea of leaving his father without a son or failing in his duty to complete the journey safely. It was during this moment of doubt that Azariah appeared, his calm and steady presence as reassuring as ever. Azariah had a way of knowing when Tobiah needed guidance, as if he could see into the young man's heart. Without waiting for Tobiah to speak, Azariah sat down beside him and broke the silence. "You are afraid," Azariah said gently. "Afraid of what might happen if you choose to marry Sara." Tobiah nodded, not bothering to hide his fears. I've seen the pain she carries, Azariah. I want to help her, to give her the love and happiness she deserves. But what if I fail? What if I die like the others? I don't want to leave my father or break Sara's heart further. Azariah placed a reassuring hand on Tobiah's shoulder. Tobiah, have you not seen how God has guided you every step of this journey? From the moment you left your father's home, you have been part of a greater plan. The challenges you have faced were not meant to break you but to prepare you for this very moment. You are not alone in this. Tobiah looked at Azariah, his eyes searching for answers. But how can I face something as powerful as a demon? How can I succeed where others have failed? Azariah's expression was firm but kind. The strength to overcome this does not come from you alone. It comes from God, who has already equipped you with everything you need. Do you remember the fish you caught by the river? Its liver and heart hold the power to drive out the demon. When burned, their smoke will banish the evil spirit, for these elements carry the strength of the Almighty. All you need is faith, to trust in God's power and His plan for you and Sara. Though Azariah's words filled Tobiah with a renewed sense of hope, the task still felt daunting. What if I fail? Tobiah whispered. Azariah smiled gently. Failure is only possible if you lose faith. Trust in God, Tobiah. He has brought you this far for a reason. Encouraged by Azariah's wisdom, Tobiah resolved to go through with the marriage. He approached Gabael the next morning and declared his intentions. I wish to marry Sara, he said firmly. I believe that with God's help, we can overcome the curse that has plagued her. Gabael, though surprised by Tobiah's courage, hesitated. You are a brave young man, Tobiah, he said, but you must understand the risk. No one has survived a marriage to Sara. Are you truly prepared for what may happen? Tobiah met Gabael's gaze with unwavering determination. I trust in God's protection, he said. I believe He has brought me here for this purpose, and I will do all that is required to see this through. Sara, who had overheard the conversation, was deeply moved by Tobiah's words. Tears filled her eyes as she stepped forward. Do you truly mean it? She asked softly. Do you truly believe we can overcome this together? Tobiah nodded, his voice steady. I do. I believe in God's power, and I believe in us. You are not cursed, Sara. You are loved, and you deserve to be free from this torment. The family began preparations for the wedding, though the air was thick with both hope and apprehension. Gabael gave his blessing, though his concern for Tobiah's safety was evident. Sara, for the first time in years, allowed herself to hope that this union could finally break the cycle of pain that had defined her life. The wedding ceremony was a bittersweet affair, filled with laughter and tears. Tobiah and Sara exchanged vows under the watchful eyes of their family and guests. Their hands joined as a symbol of their commitment to one another. But as the evening wore on, the anticipation of the bridal night grew heavier. Everyone knew what was at stake. When the time came, Tobiah and Sara entered the bridal chamber together. Azariah had given Tobiah detailed instructions on what to do. Tobiah lit a fire in the chamber and placed the liver and heart of the fish upon the flames. As the smoke began to rise, filling the room with its acrid scent, Tobiah held Sara's hand tightly, praying aloud for God's protection. The atmosphere in the room changed suddenly. The temperature dropped, and a chilling wind swept through the chamber. The shadows seemed to writhe and shift, and a low, guttural growl echoed through the air. Tobiah felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as the presence of the demon Asmodeus became palpable. Sara clung to Tobiah, her fear evident, but Tobiah stood firm. "Do not be afraid," he said, his voice steady despite the fear pounding in his chest. "God is with us. He will protect us." The growling grew louder, the shadows twisting into unnatural shapes. But then, as the smoke from the fire thickened and spread, a sudden burst of light filled the room. The demon's presence recoiled, its growls turning into screams before disappearing entirely. The air grew still, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Sara collapsed into Tobiah's arms, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. "The curse is broken." The next morning, when the news spread, the household erupted in celebration. Gabael embraced Tobiah, calling him a hero, while Sara's previously somber demeanor transformed into radiant joy. For the first time in years, she felt free to hope, to love, and to live without fear. Tobiah, too, felt a deep sense of gratitude and awe. He knew that the victory was not his alone. It was the result of God's guidance, Azariah's wisdom, and the faith that had carried him through every trial. He looked at Sara, now his wife, and saw in her eyes the promise of a new beginning, one filled with hope and joy. That night, as Tobiah and Sara sat together under the stars, Azariah watched from a distance. His expression was one of quiet satisfaction, knowing that the young man he had guided was fulfilling his divine purpose. Tobiah's courage and faith had not only delivered Sara from her torment, but had also revealed his own capacity to be an instrument of God's will. Though Tobiah still did not fully understand Azariah's true nature, he felt a growing sense of awe and gratitude for the man who had guided him through every challenge. And as the stars shone brightly overhead, Tobiah knew that his journey was far from over. Greater challenges lay ahead, but with faith and divine guidance, he was ready to face them. The sun rose over the land of Media as Tobiah, now accompanied by his wife Sara and his steadfast guide Azariah, prepared for the journey back home. The joy of their union and the miraculous breaking of Sara's curse filled the air with a sense of hope and gratitude. Tobiah had completed the formalities of retrieving his father's entrusted money from Gabael, who warmly bid them farewell with blessings for their journey ahead. But as they began their return, a quiet tension settled over Tobiah. His thoughts were now consumed by his father, Tobit, who remained blind and in need of healing. Though their journey had brought miracles and blessings thus far, Tobiah could not shake the weight of uncertainty that lingered in his heart. Would the money be enough to restore his father's health? Could the God who had delivered Sara from her torment also heal his father's eyes? Sara noticed Tobiah's introspection as they walked and gently took his hand. "You've done so much already," she said softly. "My family and I owe you everything. I know you're worried about your father, but if there's one thing I've learned, it's that God's plan is always greater than what we can see." Azariah, who had been walking ahead, turned back and smiled knowingly. "Sara is right, Tobiah. Faith has brought you this far. Trust that it will carry you the rest of the way." Though Tobiah nodded in agreement, the road ahead seemed heavier with each step. He knew his father had placed all his hope in him, and the thought of returning empty-handed, without a way to heal Tobit's blindness, filled him with dread. Still, the memory of God's faithfulness on their journey so far gave him the strength to press on. Back in Tobit's home, the atmosphere was one of anticipation and longing. Each day, Tobit would sit by the window, listening intently for any sound that might signal Tobiah's return. Though he could not see, his heart was filled with both hope and anxiety. He prayed constantly, asking God to watch over his son and bring him back safely. Beside him, Anna worked tirelessly, her hands busy with weaving, though her mind was elsewhere. "Do you think he's all right?" Anna asked one evening, her voice trembling. "It's been so long since he left. What if something has happened to him?" Tobit reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "Our son is brave and faithful," he said firmly, "and he is not alone. I believe God has sent someone to guide and protect him. We must trust in his providence, even when the waiting feels unbearable." Though Anna nodded, her worry was evident. She couldn't help but think of the dangers Tobiah might have faced. The treacherous roads, the possibility of bandits, and the uncertainty of whether the debt would even be repaid. Yet, like Tobit, she clung to the hope that their son would return. The days turned into weeks, and the waiting grew more difficult. Friends and neighbors would occasionally stop by, offering words of encouragement, but their visits often left Anna feeling even more anxious. The weight of the family's struggles, Tobit's blindness, their financial difficulties, and the uncertainty of Tobiah's journey seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. As Tobiah, Sara, and Azariah drew closer to Tobit's home, Tobiah's excitement began to build. He couldn't wait to see his parents, to show them that he had returned safely and to introduce them to his new wife. Yet, beneath his joy lay a lingering fear. What if the money wasn't enough to cure his father's blindness? What if he returned with everything but the one thing his family needed most? Azariah, ever attuned to Tobiah's thoughts, placed a hand on his shoulder as they paused by a stream to rest. "You've done well, Tobiah," he said gently. "But remember, the journey isn't over yet. There is still one more task to complete." Tobiah looked at Azariah, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean? What else is there to do?" Azariah's expression was calm, his voice filled with quiet assurance. "God's plan is always greater than what we can see. Trust that He will reveal the next step when the time comes." Though Tobiah didn't fully understand, he nodded, choosing to trust in Azariah's wisdom. He glanced at Sara, who smiled at him encouragingly, and felt a renewed sense of determination. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he would face it with faith. As the trio approached Tobit's home, Anna was the first to spot them from a distance. She cried out in joy, dropping her work and rushing to meet them. "Tobiah, my son!" she exclaimed, tears streaming down her face as she embraced him. "You're home! Thank God, you're home!" Tobiah held his mother tightly, overwhelmed by the sight of her after so long. "I've missed you, Mother," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "And I have so much to tell you." Anna pulled back, her eyes scanning the group. When she saw Sara, she gasped in surprise. "And who is this?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Tobiah smiled, taking Sara's hand. "Mother, this is Sara, my wife. I'll explain everything. But first, I need to see Father." Inside the house, Tobit sat in his usual place by the window, his blind eyes gazing out as if trying to see the world beyond. When he heard Anna's voice calling his name, he turned toward the sound, his heart pounding with anticipation. "Tobiah?" he called out, his voice trembling. "Is it you?" "It's me, Father," Tobiah replied, rushing to his side. He knelt before Tobit, taking his father's hands in his own. "I've returned, just as I promised." Tobit's face broke into a wide smile, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Praise God!" he exclaimed. "You've come back to us. I knew He would watch over you." As Tobiah recounted the details of his journey, the repayment of the debt, his marriage to Sara, and the trials they had overcome, Tobit listened intently, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. But when Tobiah mentioned the fish and its organs, Tobit's expression turned thoughtful. Azariah, who had remained silent during the reunion, stepped forward, his presence commanding yet gentle. "Tobiah," he said, his voice calm but firm, "the time has come to complete the task God has given you. The gallbladder of the fish, use it to heal your father's eyes." Tobiah hesitated, his hands trembling as he reached for the pouch where the gallbladder was stored. "Are you sure this will work?" he asked, his voice filled with both hope and doubt. Azariah nodded, his expression serene. "Do you trust in God's power?" Tobiah took a deep breath, his faith outweighing his fear. He carefully prepared the gallbladder as Azariah instructed, placing it over Tobit's eyes. The room fell silent, the air thick with anticipation as everyone watched and waited. First, nothing happened. But then, Tobit gasped, his hands reaching up to his face. "I can see!" he exclaimed, his voice filled with wonder. "The darkness is gone. I can see." Tobiah and Anna cried out in joy, embracing Tobit as tears of gratitude flowed freely. Sara watched the scene with a radiant smile, her heart swelling with love for the family that had welcomed her so warmly. As the family celebrated, Azariah stepped forward once more, his expression solemn yet kind. "There is something I must tell you," he said. "I am not who you think I am." The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at him. Tobiah frowned, confusion clouding his features. "What do you mean?" Azariah's voice was calm, his words carrying an otherworldly weight. "I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels who stand in the presence of God. I was sent to guide you, Tobiah, and to ensure that God's plan for your family was fulfilled. The family stared in awe, their hearts filled with a mixture of wonder and reverence. Raphael smiled gently. "Do not be afraid. God has seen your faith, your perseverance, and your love for one another. He has blessed you, and He will continue to watch over you." With those words, Raphael disappeared, leaving the family in awe of the divine intervention that had shaped their journey. Tobiah, Sara, and Tobit knelt together, offering prayers of gratitude for the blessings they had received. The return of Tobiah and the healing of Tobit marked a turning point for the family. Their trials had tested their faith, but through it all, they had trusted in God's providence. The presence of Raphael, the miracles they had witnessed, and the love that bound them together were a testament to the power of faith and divine intervention. As they sat together that evening, the stars shining brightly above, Tobiah reflected on all that had happened. "Our journey has been difficult," he said softly, "but it has shown me that God's plan is always greater than what we can see. I am grateful for every challenge, for they have brought us to this moment." Tobit smiled, his sight restored and his heart full. "You have done well, my son, and now we will continue to trust in God, knowing that He is always with us." The family's story became a beacon of hope for their community, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, God's light shines through. And as Tobiah and Sara began their new life together, they carried with them the lessons of faith, love, and the miraculous power of God's providence. The air in Tobit's home was thick with anticipation as Tobiah stood beside his father, the small pouch containing the fish gallbladder in his trembling hands. The instructions from Raphael, whom Tobiah now knew to be no ordinary guide but an angel of the Lord, echoed in his mind. This was the moment he had prayed for, the culmination of his journey, but the weight of it filled him with both hope and trepidation. What if it didn't work? What if he failed to restore his father's sight? Raphael's calm, authoritative voice broke through Tobiah's swirling thoughts. "Tobiah, do not doubt. Trust in the Lord. He has brought you this far, and His power will see you through this final step. The fish gallbladder is the tool, but it is your faith that will bring healing." Tobiah nodded, taking a deep breath to steady himself. Kneeling before his father, he carefully prepared the gallbladder as Raphael had instructed. The room was silent, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the quiet breaths of those gathered. Tobit sat patiently, his blind eyes turned toward his son. A mixture of trust and hope etched into his face. "Father," Tobiah said softly, "I'm going to place this on your eyes, just as Raphael instructed. Please remain still and trust in God." Tobit smiled, his faith unwavering. "My son, I trust you and the Lord with all my heart. Do as you are instructed, and may God's will be done." With gentle hands, Tobiah placed the fish gallbladder over his father's eyes. The strong, acrid scent filled the air, causing some of the family members to step back, but Tobiah remained focused. He prayed silently as he worked, asking God to perform the miracle they so desperately needed. As the minutes passed, a strange warmth spread across Tobit's face. He gasped softly, his hands reaching up instinctively to touch his eyes. "I feel something," he whispered. "It's as if light is pressing through the darkness." Tobiah quickly removed the gallbladder and stepped back, his heart pounding. All eyes in the room were fixed on Tobit as he slowly opened his eyes. At first, they seemed cloudy, unfocused. But then, as if a veil had been lifted, his gaze sharpened. The room grew still as Tobit blinked rapidly, his expression shifting from confusion to wonder. I can see," Tobit exclaimed, his voice breaking with emotion. "The darkness is gone. I can see again." The room erupted into cries of joy and praise. Anna rushed to her husband's side, tears streaming down her face as she embraced him. "Oh, Tobit," she sobbed, "your sight has been restored. Praise be to God." Tobiah knelt beside his father, overcome with emotion. "Father, it's true. You can see again." Tobit turned to his son, his newly restored eyes filling with tears as he took in the sight of him. "My son," he said, his voice trembling, I see you, and I see the hand of God in all of this. You have returned to me, and you have brought not only the means to save us, but also the proof of God's faithfulness. My heart is full, and my eyes are open." Tobit's gaze then shifted to Sara, who stood quietly nearby, her hands clasped together. A radiant smile spread across his face as he extended his arms toward her. "And you, my daughter, welcome to our family. You are a blessing from the Lord, and I see the love and courage that bind you to my son. Thank you for standing by him." Sara stepped forward, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. She knelt beside Tobit, taking his hands in hers. "I am honored to be part of this family," she said softly. "God has worked wonders in all of our lives." As the family rejoiced, Raphael stood quietly in the background, a serene smile on his face. His mission was nearly complete, and it was time to reveal the truth about his identity. Stepping forward, he raised his hand, commanding the room's attention. The joyful chatter ceased, and all eyes turned to him. "Tobit, Tobiah, and all who are gathered here," Raphael began, his voice calm yet powerful. "There is something you must know. I am not merely the traveler Azariah, as you have known me. I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels who stand before the throne of God. I was sent by the Almighty to guide Tobiah on his journey, to protect him from harm, and to ensure that God's blessings were fulfilled in your lives." The room fell silent as everyone stared at Raphael in awe. Tobit's mouth opened in shock, and Tobiah took a step back, his mind racing to process the revelation. You're an angel?" Tobiah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Raphael nodded, his expression gentle. "Yes, Tobiah. I have walked with you as a companion and friend, but my true purpose was to carry out God's will. Every step of your journey, every trial you faced, was part of a divine plan to strengthen your faith and bring healing to this family." Tobit fell to his knees, his head bowed in reverence. "An angel of the Lord," he said, his voice trembling. "We have been in the presence of one of God's messengers. Praise be to the Almighty." Raphael extended his hand, helping Tobit to his feet. "Do not fear, and do not be overwhelmed. The Lord has seen your faith, your perseverance, and your devotion. He has answered your prayers and brought you through these trials to show you his power and love. Now, continue to live in faith and share the blessings you have received with others." Turning to Tobiah, Raphael placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have shown great courage, Tobiah. You trusted in God when the path was uncertain, and you carried out his will with faith and humility. Remember this always. The Lord is with you, and he will guide you in all that you do." Raphael then stepped back, his form glowing faintly with a divine light. "My mission here is complete. I must now return to the presence of the Almighty. But know this, God is always with you, and his angels watch over his faithful." With those words, Raphael disappeared, leaving the family in awe of the miracle they had witnessed. The room was filled with a profound sense of peace and gratitude as they knelt together in prayer, thanking God for his mercy and provision. In the days that followed, the family's home became a place of celebration and thanksgiving. Neighbors and friends came to hear the story of Tobiah's journey and the miraculous events that had unfolded. Tobit, his sight restored, often spoke of the lessons he had learned through his trials. "God's timing is perfect," Tobit would say. "Even when we cannot see the way forward, his plan is unfolding. Trust in him and he will provide." Tobiah and Sara began their life together with a renewed sense of purpose, their love strengthened by the trials they had overcome. They became known in their community for their generosity and faith, often sharing their story as a testament to God's power and providence. And though Raphael was no longer with them in physical form, his presence remained in their hearts, a reminder of the divine guidance that had carried them through every challenge. As the stars shone brightly over their home one evening, Tobiah looked up at the sky, his heart full of gratitude. "Thank you, Lord," he whispered, "for the journey, for the miracles, and for the love that has brought us here." As the story of Tobiah's journey comes to a close, it leaves behind a powerful message that resonates through time. a testament to the unshakable bond between love and faith. From the very beginning, this story reminds us that when we place our trust in God, He never abandons us. In the darkest moments, when the road ahead seems uncertain, His hand is always at work, often in ways we cannot see or understand until the time is right. Tobiah's journey is a profound example of this truth. Faced with the daunting task of traveling to a distant land, retrieving his family's debt, and later confronting a demon to free the woman he loved, Tobiah could have given in to fear and doubt. But instead, he chose to trust in God. And in response, God provided him with exactly what he needed: a companion in the form of the angel Raphael, whose guidance and wisdom illuminated the path forward. Through this story, we see that God's help often comes through others. It may arrive in the form of a friend, a stranger, or even a heavenly messenger, as it did for Tobiah. The lesson is clear. When we have faith, God provides, even if His methods are beyond our comprehension. Faith is not just a passive belief. It is an active trust that moves us to take steps forward, knowing that God will meet us there. Tobiah's unwavering belief in God's providence enabled him to overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. He faced danger, uncertainty, and spiritual trials, yet he never lost sight of the truth that God was with him. His story teaches us that faith is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward in spite of it, trusting that God's strength will sustain us. Another central theme of Tobiah's story is the value of family and the transformative power of filial love. Tobiah's journey was not just a mission to retrieve money. It was an act of love and devotion to his father, Tobit. Despite the dangers and challenges he knew he would face, Tobiah willingly took on the responsibility because he understood the importance of family. In every step of his journey, Tobiah's actions were guided by his love for his father and his desire to ease his family's burdens. This selflessness and loyalty are a testament to the strength of familial bonds. Tobit, too, demonstrated his love for his son through his constant prayers and unwavering trust in God to protect him. Even in his blindness, Tobit's faith in his son's ability and in God's providence never wavered. Tobiah's devotion to his family was not without its rewards. Through his courage and faith, he not only secured the resources needed to support his family, but also gained a wife in Sara, whose love and partnership brought even greater joy and stability to their household. The union between Tobiah and Sara serves as a reminder that selfless love is often met with blessings that exceed our expectations. This story encourages us to reflect on the role of family in our own lives. It challenges us to consider how we can demonstrate love and devotion to those who mean the most to us, even when it requires sacrifice. In the end, it is through these acts of love that we find fulfillment and purpose. Perhaps one of the most striking elements of Tobiah's story is the presence of the supernatural. The intervention of the angel Raphael, the miraculous properties of the fish's organs, and the ultimate healing of Tobit's blindness all point to the reality of God's power at work in the world. These events remind us that the Bible is filled with moments where the natural and the supernatural intersect, revealing the divine presence in our everyday lives. Raphael's role in the story is particularly significant. As an angel sent by God, he serves as a bridge between heaven and earth, guiding Tobiah through his trials and ensuring that God's plan is fulfilled. His wisdom, protection, and eventual revelation of his true identity reinforce the idea that God's presence is often closer than we realize. The supernatural aspects of the story also underscore the importance of hope. Even when the odds seemed impossible, when Sara was bound by a curse that had claimed the lives of 7 men before Tobiah, or when Tobit's blindness appeared permanent, God's power brought about redemption and healing. These moments of divine intervention serve as a reminder that no situation is beyond God's ability to transform. They encourage us to hold on to hope, even when the circumstances seem dire, because God's timing and methods are always perfect. The story of Tobiah and Raphael also invites us to consider the role of angels in our own lives. While we may not always recognize their presence, the Bible assures us that angels are sent to protect, guide, and minister to God's people. This knowledge can strengthen our faith, reminding us that we are never truly alone. In the end, Tobiah's journey is about more than the challenges he faced or the miracles he witnessed. It is a story of transformation, of a young man who grew in faith, courage, and understanding through the trials he endured. It is also a story of redemption, as his family was restored not just financially, but spiritually and emotionally as well. The lessons of Tobiah's story continue to resonate today. They remind us of the importance of faith, love, and hope in the face of life's challenges. They encourage us to trust in God's providence, even when we cannot see the way forward. And they inspire us to look for the ways in which God is working in our own lives, often through the people and circumstances we least expect. As we reflect on this story, let us carry its lessons with us, allowing them to shape our actions and attitudes. Let us strive to show the same courage, faith, and love that Tobiah demonstrated, trusting that God will use our efforts for his greater purpose. The story of Tobiah, Sara, and Raphael is a reminder that God's providence is not confined to the pages of Scripture. It is alive and active in our lives today. When we face trials, when the road ahead seems uncertain, we can take comfort in the knowledge that God is with us. He may send help in the form of a friend, a stranger, or even a heavenly messenger, but his faithfulness is unwavering. Through this story, we are reminded that every challenge is an opportunity to grow in faith. Every act of love strengthens the bonds that hold us together. And every moment of hope, no matter how small, is a reflection of the divine light that guides us through the darkness. As the family knelt together in prayer, their hearts filled with gratitude, their story became a testament to the power of faith, love, and hope, a message that continues to inspire and uplift all who hear it.